I should have known something was wrong the moment the gate was open. That gate, thick iron, hand-welded, and stubborn as a mule, was never open. I'd installed it myself after the third break-in years back, and only 3 people had the code. Me, my property manager, and the bear who lived down the ridge, kidding, mostly. Yet there it was, yawning wide like a mouth mid-scream, inviting the forest, and anyone else, straight onto my land. My tires crunched slowly over the gravel as I drove in, heart thumping harder with every foot I passed. I'd come back 3 weeks early. No warning, no calls, just a sudden itch in my bones that said, go home, now. I'd told myself it was stress, burnout, too much city noise rattling my brain. But as my cabin, no, my mansion, as I'd later hear it called, came into view, that it turned into a full-body alarm. There were cars parked in front. Not 1, not 2, 5. A white Lexus, a black Escalade, a cherry-red convertible that looked wildly out of place on a mountain road. And was that a catering van? Smoke curled from my chimney. Laughter drifted through the trees. And then I saw the banner. HOA Community Retreat. Private property access granted. I slammed the brake so hard my seatbelt cut into my shoulder. HOA? On my land? I barely had time to step out of the truck before a shrill voice pierced the air. Excuse me, you can't park there. I turned to see her marching toward me like she owned the ground beneath her sensible heels. Blonde helmet hair, oversized sunglasses, clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. She looked me up and down, mud on my boots, flannel shirt, travel-stained jacket, and sneered. This is a private HOA event, she said. If you're a delivery driver, unload around back. If you're lost, I'll call security. I stared at her, at my porch behind her, at the strangers drinking wine where I'd once watched the sunrise in silence. And that's when she added the sentence that changed everything. You need to leave immediately before I call the police. I smiled. Oh, I said calmly. Please do. By the time the cops arrived, the party was in full swing. I stayed near my truck, arms crossed, watching the spectacle unfold like a bad reality show I never signed up for. There were string lights draped across my deck twinkling like they'd always been there. Folding tables lined the lawn, covered in linen and catered trays. Someone had moved my hand-carved bench to make room for a portable bar. And that woman, Clipboard Karen, I'd already decided, was strutting around barking orders. I overheard snippets as she passed. Make sure no one goes upstairs. That's my suite. No, the West Wing is for board members only. Yes, I approve the caterer. I'm the HOA president. My jaw tightened. West Wing? Suite? This wasn't just trespassing. This was a hostile takeover. When the police cruiser finally rolled in, Karen rushed toward it like a damsel in distress rehearsing her lines. Thank God you're here, she cried. That man, she jabbed a finger at me, refuses to leave. He has been loitering, harassing guests, and threatening our event. The officer turned to me, calm, neutral. Sir, is that true? I handed him my driver's license. This is my property. Karen laughed, actually laughed. Oh, that's adorable, she said. Officer, this man is clearly confused. This property belongs to the Silver Pines HOA. We've been using it for months. The officer frowned and glanced back at me. So, I pulled out my phone, opened a folder I hadn't touched in years, and held it up. Deed, survey, tax records, all in my name. Karen's smile faltered. Those can be faked, she snapped quickly. He probably broke in. Look at him. The officer turned back to her. Do you have documentation? She straightened, chin high. I don't need it on me. Everyone here knows this is our community lodge. A beat, then another. The second officer stepped out of the car and quietly asked, community lodge or private residence? Karen's face flushed. Well, it was vacant, and the HOA took responsibility for maintaining it. I finally spoke again. You changed the locks, I said. She whipped around. For safety. You rented it out. For community bonding. You called it your mansion. Her mouth opened, closed, and then she did exactly what people like her always do when the ground starts to crack beneath their feet. She screamed, "This is harassment. Arrest him. He's trespassing on HOA property." The officers exchanged a look, and that's when one of them said the words Karen never expected to hear. "I'm going to need you to step aside." As she was escorted away from my porch, still shouting, still insisting she was in charge, I looked around at the mess, the strangers, the stolen sense of peace. And I realized something. This wasn't an accident. This was a plan. Once the cops separated Karen from her imaginary throne, the party collapsed faster than a cheap lawn chair. Wine glasses froze midair. Laughter died in awkward gulps. A man in a polo shirt quietly slid a shrimp platter behind a tree like evidence. One by one, guests began realizing the uncomfortable truth. They weren't attending a community retreat. They were trespassing. The officers asked everyone to remain on site while they sorted things out. That's when Karen truly unraveled. "You can't do this," she screeched, trying to pull away from the officer's gentle grip. "This property belongs to the HOA. We've maintained it. We've invested in it." I raised an eyebrow. "By breaking in." She ignored me and turned back to the cops. "He abandoned it. It's been empty for years." "That's not true," I said calmly. "I come up every season. Just not announced." Karen's eyes darted toward me. "Wild now. You left it unattended. That makes it community property." The younger officer blinked. "That's not how property law works." She sputtered. "Well, it should be." As the guests were slowly escorted off the property, the officers began asking questions. Real ones. Names. Dates. How long the HOA had been using the cabin. That's when the truth began spilling out. At first, no one wanted to talk. HOA folks have a hive mind loyalty until consequences appear. Then it's every clipboard for itself. A man with thinning hair and nervous hands finally spoke up. "She told us she had permission," he said, nodding toward Karen. "Said the owner signed a use agreement." "Did anyone see that agreement?" the officer asked. Silence. Another woman chimed in. "Karen said she handled it. She's the president." Karen snapped around. "I said I was in talks." I laughed once. Sharp, unamused. "In talks with who?" I asked. "My fireplace." The officers took Karen aside while they ran my documents through their system. I watched from the porch as they questioned her, her posture shifting from rigid confidence to frantic defensiveness. Eventually, one officer returned to me. "Sir," he said quietly, "everything checks out. This is fully your property. No easements. No HOA claims. No agreements." I nodded. "I know. What would you like to do?" I looked around. At the boot marks on my deck, at the gouges in my hardwood floor through the open door, at the broken lock hanging uselessly from the frame. "I want her off my land," I said, "and I want to know how long this has been happening." The officer exhaled slowly. "That's going to take some digging." Karen was finally escorted back toward me, face pale but jaw still clenched. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We can resolve this privately." "No," I replied. "We can't." Her eyes hardened. "You don't understand how much work we put into this place." I stepped closer. "You mean my place?" She leaned in, lowering her voice. "You should be thanking me. This cabin was rotting. I turned it into something valuable." Something snapped. "You changed the locks," I said coldly. "You moved my furniture. You rented out my home." She scoffed. "It was unused." "That doesn't make it yours." The officer cleared his throat. You're being issued a formal trespass warning. You are not to return to this property." Karen's mouth fell open. "You can't be serious." "I am," he said. "And given the circumstances, this may escalate into charges pending further investigation." Her eyes flicked back to me, blazing. "This isn't over," she hissed. "Oh," I said quietly. "It absolutely is." After the police cleared out the last guest and the final car disappeared down the road, the forest went silent again. Too silent. I stood alone on my porch, surveying the damage. My cabin, my sanctuary, felt violated, like someone had gone through my diary and rearranged my memories for convenience. Inside, it was worse. The furniture had been upgraded. My old leather couch replaced with a white sectional that already had wine stains. My shelves of books were shoved into boxes. The hand-woven rug my grandmother made? Gone. I found my bedroom locked, with a different key. I forced the door open and felt my stomach drop. My things had been moved. My clothes removed from a closet. The bed replaced with something out of a magazine. On the nightstand sat a framed photo. Karen, standing on my balcony, smiling. I took the frame and turned it face down. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I went through every room, taking photos, documenting everything. Damage, changes, missing items. And then I found the binder. It was tucked inside a kitchen drawer, labeled neatly. Silver Pines HOA, Lodge Operations. My hands shook as I opened it. There were schedules, cleaning logs, rental records. They'd been using my cabin for over 8 months, charging people, profiting, hosting weddings, corporate retreats, weekend rentals, and at the center of it all, Karen's signature. Over and over again, I sat down hard at the kitchen table. 8 months. 8 months of strangers sleeping in my bed. 8 months of her calling it hers. My phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer friend back in the city, the one person I trusted with things like this. Me, HOA illegally took over my property. I have proof. How bad is this? The reply came fast. Lawyer. For them? Catastrophic. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Good. Because if Karen thought calling the cops was the worst thing that could happen, she had no idea what was coming next. By morning, my cabin smelled like burnt coffee and revenge. I hadn't slept more than an hour, but adrenaline kept me upright as I spread the HOA binder across the kitchen table like crime scene. Every page felt heavier than the last. Dates, fees, guest counts, maintenance costs, all meticulously logged, all signed off by Karen as HOA president and acting property custodian. Acting. The audacity nearly made me laugh. I called my lawyer friend, Marcus, before the sun cleared the trees. He listened in silence while I explained everything, occasionally letting out a low whistle. This isn't just trespassing, he finally said. This is fraud, conversion, potentially criminal misrepresentation. I want it all, I replied. Every penny, every name. He paused. Then don't confront them directly. Let them dig their own grave. That afternoon, I drove down to the county records office. If Karen had been bold enough to steal my home, she'd likely been sloppy somewhere else. People like her always were. They relied on confidence and noise to cover gaps in truth. The clerk, an older woman with sharp eyes and zero patience for nonsense, pulled up the records. No HOA ownership filed here, she said flatly. No lease. No usage agreement. Nothing. I slid the binder across the counter. They've been operating rentals out of it. Her lips thinned. Then they've also been dodging permits. Bingo. Within an hour, she'd flagged the property for an authorized commercial use and referred it to zoning enforcement. But the real bombshell came when she leaned closer and lowered her voice. You might want to check this, she said, pointing at her screen. Your address was listed as the HOA's mailing location for nearly a year. My blood ran cold. That means... It means they've been using your property as their legal base of operations. I thanked her and left, heart pounding. By the time I got back to the cabin, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, voicemails. From Karen. I ignored them all. Instead, I logged into the county's public complaint portal and filed a formal report. Unauthorized rentals, fraudulent representation, illegal commercial use. Then I did something Marcus had hinted at but not explicitly said. I posted a notice. Right at the entrance of my property, where Karen had once hung her cheerful HOA banner, I nailed up a laminated sign. Private property, no HOA authorization. All prior rentals were unlawful. I took a photo and waited. It didn't take long. By evening, a black SUV rolled up the drive. Karen stepped out, sunglasses on, jaw set. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "You're making a huge mistake," she snapped. I leaned against my truck. "You should leave." She scoffed. "You can't just shut down HOA operations." "Watch me." She stepped closer. "You don't understand the legal consequences." I smiled. "I do. That's why I'm enjoying this." Her voice dropped. "We can settle." I laughed. "With money you stole." Her face reddened. "The community depends on this place." "Then you shouldn't have lied." She clenched her fists. "I improved it." "You exploited it." For a moment, she looked like she might scream again. Instead, she did something worse. She threatened me. "You don't know who you're messing with," she said quietly. "The HOA has connections." I straightened. "So do I." She turned and left, tires spinning gravel as she went. That night, the email started. Not from Karen, but from homeowners. One message read, "I had no idea the cabin wasn't HOA owned. Karen told us it was donated." Another, "We paid hundreds for rentals. Where did that money go?" Another, "If this is illegal, are we liable?" I forwarded everything to Marcus. His response was a single word: "Excellent." 2 days later, the county arrived. Zoning enforcement, fire safety, health department. They walked through my cabin, taking notes, shaking heads. No commercial fire suppression. No food service permits. No lodging license. One inspector whistled. This place was a lawsuit waiting to happen. Karen arrived mid-inspection, red-faced and furious. "You can't do this without HOA approval," she yelled. The inspector didn't even look at her. This isn't your property." Karen rounded on me. "You set this up." I shrugged. Actions have consequences. She tried to argue, but the citations kept coming. Fines, orders, cease and desist notices. When it was over, Karen slumped against her SUV, phone pressed to her ear, voice trembling. That was when I noticed something new. A group of HOA members standing apart, whispering, looking at her, not with loyalty, with suspicion. The hive was breaking. That evening, Marcus called. "They are panicking," he said. "HOA board meeting tonight. Emergency session." I smiled. I'd love to be a fly on that wall. "You might not need to," he replied. "They are legally required to notify you now that your property is involved." Sure enough, an email hit my inbox minutes later. Subject: Urgent HOA matter regarding property use. I clicked it. Karen had CC'd half the neighborhood. I replied with one sentence: "All communication regarding my property must go through my attorney." Then I attached the county citations. Silence followed, for about an hour. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A different voice this time. "Male. Nervous." "This is Tom," he said, "Vice President of the HOA. "Yes." We need to talk." I looked out at my cabin, the sun setting behind it, peaceful again for the first time in months. "Tomorrow," I said, "at my lawyer's office." He swallowed audibly. "Understood." I hung up. Karen thought she'd taken over a mansion. What she'd really done was awaken the owner. The conference room smelled like stale coffee, fear, and expensive cologne. I sat at one end of the polished table beside Marcus, calm on the surface, coiled steel underneath. Across from us were 6 HOA board members. Karen sat in the center, spine rigid, lips pressed into a thin line, her usual clipboard clutched like a life raft. This wasn't a community meeting. This was a reckoning. Tom, the vice president, cleared his throat. "Thank you for meeting with us." Marcus nodded. "Let's begin." Karen jumped in immediately. "This is unnecessary." The HOA acted in good faith. Marcus didn't even look at her. Good faith doesn't include changing locks, collecting rent, or representing private property as HOA owned. A board member to Karen's left, a woman with tired eyes, shifted uncomfortably. "Karen, you said the owner approved everything." Karen's jaw tightened. "He abandoned the property." I leaned forward. I pay property taxes every year. Silence. Another board member spoke up. You told us the deed was transferred. Karen snapped her head around. I said it was pending. That's not what you said at the March meeting, Tom replied quietly. Karen's eyes widened. You're taking his side now. Tom exhaled. I'm taking the side of not going to jail. That's when the room changed. Papers shuffled. Phones came out. People avoided Karen's gaze. Marcus slid a folder across the table. Here are the potential liabilities. Restitution for all rental income, damages for property alteration, county fines, and legal fees. One of the board members paled. How much are we talking? Marcus didn't sugarcoat it. 6 figures. Possibly more. Karen shot to her feet. This is extortion. No, Marcus said calmly. This is accountability. She turned to the board. You're going to let him bully us. A man at the far end spoke softly. You put us in this position. Karen laughed, sharp and brittle. I built this HOA. And you may have destroyed it, he replied. The tired-eyed woman finally spoke again. Did you personally profit from the rentals? Karen froze. Answer the question, Tom said. Her silence was answer enough. I watched it happen in real time, the unraveling, the moment power drained from her posture and left only panic behind. Marcus leaned forward. Here's the path forward. Full cooperation. Full disclosure. And Karen steps down immediately. Karen slammed her clipboard on the table. Absolutely not. Tom stood. Then we vote. She stared at him in disbelief. You can't. I can, he said. And I will. Hands raised. One by one. Karen's mouth fell open. The vote was unanimous. She was removed as HOA president on the spot. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked small. This is illegal, she whispered. Tom met her gaze. So was what you did. Karen left the room without another word. The door closed behind her with a finality that echoed. No one spoke for a moment. Then Tom turned to me. We're deeply sorry. I nodded. Apologies don't undo damage. We know, he said. We want to make this right. Marcus took over. Then here are the terms. Restitution. Public notice to homeowners. Full audit of HOA finances. Formal acknowledgement that the property was never HOA owned. And one more thing. A restraining order against Ms. Karen, Marcus added. Tom didn't hesitate. Done. As the meeting wrapped up, the board members looked relieved, except one. The tired-eyed woman lingered. I didn't know, she said quietly, but I should have asked more questions. I softened slightly. Learn from it. She nodded. Outside, Karen stood in the hallway, phone in hand, eyes blazing. This isn't over, she hissed as I passed. I paused. You're right. Her smile flickered. You finally get it. It's just beginning. I finished. The next weeks were a blur. The HOA sent out letters admitting fault. Homeowners demanded refunds. The county launched a formal investigation. And Karen went silent. Until she didn't. One morning, I arrived at my cabin to find red spray paint across the gate. Thief. I stared at it, heart pounding, not with fear, but resolve. I called the sheriff. This is harassment, he said after seeing the restraining order. We'll handle it. Security cameras went up that day, and not a moment too soon. 2 nights later, motion alerts lit up my phone. I opened the feed. Karen, standing at my gate, spray can in hand, ranting to herself. The footage was crystal clear. She was arrested before sunrise. Violation of restraining order. Vandalism. Criminal trespass. When Marcus called me with the news, I felt nothing, just closure. A month later, I sat on my porch again, coffee warm in my hands, forest quiet around me. The HOA was restructuring. The fines were paid. My cabin was mine again. But the story wasn't over yet, because Karen still hadn't faced the full consequences. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood panel walls, fluorescent lights that hummed faintly, a seal of the state mounted behind the judge's bench, watching silently as lives unraveled beneath it. I sat beside Marcus, hands folded, posture calm. Across the aisle sat Karen. No sunglasses this time. No clipboard. No confidence. She wore a beige blazer that tried, and failed, to project respectability. Her hair, once perfectly shellacked, was pulled back tight, as if control could still be wrung from tension alone. She avoided my gaze, staring straight ahead like the world might vanish if she refused to acknowledge it. The bailiff called the case. Property owner versus Silver Pines HOA et al. Karen flinched at the words et al. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and zero patience for theatrics, scanned the file. This appears to involve an authorized use of private property, misrepresentation, and financial misconduct. Yes, Your Honor, Marcus replied, and we have substantial evidence. Karen's attorney, a man who already looked tired, stood. Your Honor, my client acted in what you believe to be the community's best interest. The judge arched an eyebrow. Belief does not override law. Marcus began. Then he played the video. He walked the cart through everything. The deed, the change locks, the rental records, the county citations, the binder with Karen's signature on every page. Karen at the gate, spray paint in hand, ranting, threatening. The courtroom was silent except for her own recorded voice echoing off the walls. Karen sank lower in her seat. When it was her turn to testify, she rose slowly, hands trembling. I was trying to help, she said. The property was neglected. The HOA needed a space. I maintained it. Marcus stood. You charge rental fees. For upkeep. You deposited them into your personal account. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Karen's attorney closed his eyes. The judge leaned forward. Is that true, Ms. Karen? Karen's voice wavered. It was temporary. For 8 months. She said nothing. Marcus delivered the final blow. You presented yourself as owner. You altered property without consent. You profited personally. And when confronted, you harassed a rightful owner. The judge didn't hesitate. Her gavel struck once. Judgment for the plaintiff. Karen's shoulders collapsed. The judge continued. Restitution in full. Damages awarded. Legal fees covered. And given the evidence, this matter is referred for criminal review. Karen let out a sound that wasn't quite a sob. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. I ignored them. Karen's attorney approached me, eyes hollow. She wants to settle the remaining matters quietly. I met his gaze. That ship sailed when she spray-painted my gate. He nodded grimly and walked away. Karen stood alone by the steps, shaking, phone pressed to her ear. No one answered. The fallout was swift. Karen was charged with fraud and vandalism. The HOA sued her to recover funds. Homeowners demanded her resignation from every committee she'd ever touched. Her reputation, once built on control and noise, crumbled into silence. I heard later that she sold her house, moved away. No farewell post, no explanation, just gone. Back at my cabin, I finally began undoing the damage. I restored the old furniture, found my grandmother's rug in a storage unit the HOA had rented. I burned the white sectional in a bonfire under the stars, watching the flames eat away at someone else's idea of improvement. Peace returned slowly, carefully, but something unexpected happened. The neighbors, real ones, not HOA board members, started visiting, apologizing, bringing food, sharing stories of how Karen had bullied them too. It turned out my fight wasn't just mine. It was everyone's. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Marcus joined me on the porch. You could have sold, he said. Made a fortune. I shook my head. This place isn't for sale. He smiled. I figured. We sat in silence, listening to the forest breathe. The nightmare was over. Or so I thought. The first winter after the trial was the quietest I'd ever known. Snow fell heavy and clean, blanketing the scars that months of conflict had carved into my land. The gate stood repaired and stronger than before. The porch light glowed softly each night, not as a beacon for strangers, but as a promise that this place was once again what it was meant to be. Home. I spent those months rebuilding, not just a cabin, but myself. Every nail I hammered felt like reclaiming something. Every coat of stain I brushed onto the wood erased another fingerprint Karen had left behind. I brought back the things that mattered: my grandfather's rocking chair, the old cast-iron pans, the bookshelf exactly where it had always been. No upgrades, no improvements. Just truth. By spring, word had spread through the valley. Not gossip, respect. People waved when I drove into town. Shop owners nodded knowingly. Even the county clerk smiled when I came in to file updated security paperwork. You stood your ground, she said. Not everyone does. I thought about that a lot. Standing your ground isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It's steady. The HOA dissolved quietly a few months later. Too much distrust. Too many audits. Too many people waking up to how easily they'd handed control to the loudest voice in the room. A few former members reached out to apologize. I accepted some. Ignored others. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't mandatory for healing. Boundaries are. Instead of an HOA, something better took root. The neighbors formed an informal watch group, not to control, but to protect. No fees. No presidents. Just people looking out for each other. They invited me to join. I did. One afternoon, I found myself standing at the edge of my property, looking at the clearing where Karen once hosted her retreats. I didn't see anger anymore. I saw potential. So I did something unexpected. I opened my land, on my terms. Once a month, I hosted a small gathering. Neighbors only. Potluck style. No money. No reservations. No paperwork. Just laughter under the trees. The first time, I worried it might feel like a violation again. It didn't, because consent changes everything. A year after the court case, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I lost everything. I know you'll never forgive me. I just want you to know, I was wrong. No signature. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the fire. Not out of spite. Out of release. The cabin is still mine. Still quiet. Still strong. But it's also something new now. A reminder that ownership isn't just about deeds and locks. It's about presence. About knowing when to leave and when to return. About never letting someone else tell you what your home is worth. Especially when they call it their mansion. Sometimes, at night, I sit on the porch and listen to the wind move through the trees. I think about how close I came to losing this place, not because of force, but because of assumption. Karen assumed no one would come back. She was wrong, and that's the lesson I carry forward. Leave if you must, rest if you need, but always return, because what's truly yours is worth defending.